I will remember you. Will you remember me? Don't let your life pass you by. You're right, Harry. How you doing? Hello, everybody. Welcome to Big on East Side, the new Doctor Who Watched On podcast. A little secret.
Watch on podcast.
I sometimes push that record button and it's almost like walking onto a stage and I suddenly get stage fright and I don't know what to do. And I know I can't just sort of mumble around it. I've got to do something. So for some reason, I decided to sing you a little song. If this is your first episode, welcome. Because it might be some people's first. Sorry, hi Harry, how are you? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Next time, if we're doing songs, not to brag, but I've been trained.
To
So
what?
if you want an actual musical number to sing, I'm a
Nah,
trained singer.
nah.
Well,
I don't.
actor singer.
I hate.
No,
I
you
hate.
don't want actual training.
I hate forced like I'll be careful. I won't say names, but we have mutual friends, and I have been to parties with said mutual friends where a guitar has been brought for the intention of it being played at the
Oh
end of the
no,
night.
I'm not one of those one of those so and so's who like whips out the guitar and starts doing "Today is gonna be the day that I'm gonna throw it back to you." I'm not one of those Wonderwall guitar guys. No,
But it's
I
like
don't know how to play guitar.
it's like I know it's gonna happen because I turn up at my friend's house and then this other person turns up who doesn't live too far away. And then I know round about 1 o'clock in the morning, they're going to be like, oh, I'm just going to head back and get my guitar. We can have a jam. And that's somebody who doesn't play an instrument and enjoys to sing, but has just recently proven can't sing. Um, you are instantly outcasted. I think it would be the equivalent of me going, oh, hold on, guys. I'm just going to do a podcast with Harry, which we talk about 42 or something like that. It would be so weird.
Do you know do you know do you know what the song is that they always whip out? Do you know the song in Ice Age and Matilda? You know the down 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 down. It's
Yeah.
always that one. It's always I would like to hold that one.
If you are the
It's always that
person
one.
bringing guitars to parties,
Oh my god.
this is your
I'm
warning.
sorry. As I started singing, I got a Zoom notification saying, "Are you playing music?"
That didn't appear for me earlier. It's a bit rude, but yeah, if you are,
It's because I'm trained, Tim. It's because I'm trained.
I do promise that this is a Doctor Who podcast. I do promise, but that was a pre-warning for anybody. I feel like we should start each week now with like a warning, a type of person that society doesn't like, but they need to be told. If you are the person bringing guitars to a party, stop it. Anyway, there might be new listeners, Harry, this week because I recently found out, and if you are a new listener, welcome. Apologies for taking so long to get to Doctor Who news, but there is some good, exciting Doctor Who news coming up. But there may be new listeners because last week I announced that we were now available on Spotify. So thank you to everybody if you've bothered to follow us and give a listen over on Spotify, as well as iTunes. We're still there. Leave us a 5-star review and all that. But we are also now available to listen to on Google Podcasts as well, which is the Android equivalent of iTunes or Apple Podcasts. So if you've got a
Feels
friend,
like every week. Every week we're on a new platform.
well, I believe that we actually went on Google Podcasts last week. Is when we went up there, but I wasn't made aware of it until after the episode had gone up. So it wasn't until a few days ago that I realized we were out on Google Podcasts as well. So if you've got a friend who's been listening to the podcast on YouTube, or you've just been playing in the car, or you've got a friend who you think would really enjoy a Doctor Who themed podcast, then definitely send them over. We're now available on, I think we're on about 10 different podcast hosting sites. So there's no
Do you
excuse
think
for
there are
you.
people? Do you think people actually like that who are like, "Hey, you should check out like Tim and the View on the Inside." There's these guys called Tim and Harry. They're really fun guys. Do you know people that like, usually have that conversation in real life?
I tend to get most of my podcasts from some recommendations, but some is finding one podcast and then just that host appearing on another one. So then I'll listen to that one, and then you sort of just spider web outwards
Okay,
to
so
all
saying
sorts of different
the next
podcasts.
step for us is to start doing crossovers?
Ah, well, one could be in the works. I won't say no more, but there's been discussions. So we're now available on Google Podcasts. All exciting stuff. Now, actual Doctor Who news. Harry, what was one of my least favourite episodes from Doctor Who Series 2? Can you remember?
The Impossible Planet in the Satan Pit?
Yeah, so I am really excited to announce that the character Zachary Crossflame, who was played by Sean Parks, I believe his name is, he is the lead guy. He's got like the cool hair and he's like the leader of the team. You know who I mean, don't you?
Is he the one who goes all Satan-y and evil?
No, he's not, but he's one of the only ones who survives at the end, and I think he's the one... Because at the end, when Rose escapes, there is Rose, the Toby guy who goes mental. There is like, I think there's like a guy with like silk black hair that's like really back. And then there's this other guy, Zachary Crossflame. I will send you a image of him in a second. But he is returning to Doctor Who via Big Finish in a new Torchwood Big Finish. I do apologise. I'm just going to share my screen with Harry so Harry knows exactly who I'm on about. But yeah, go on.
Is he playing the same character that he played in Impossible Planet and Satan Pit?
Yeah, Sean Parks is coming back and he's playing the same character. But obviously he's one of only a few people who survived that episode. But I don't really know how I feel about it.
How does that work? Because that took place in like the distant future, didn't it?
Did take place. Oh, yeah, it did actually, didn't it? Okay, so I'll read you the synopsis that Big Finish have released. In the far future of the Earth Empire, Torchwood is forgotten. So it's a surprise when Zachary Crossflame of the Torchwood Archive finds himself summoned to the opening of the late Empress Library. Library. My apologies. Her son, Library. How are you pronouncing that?
Yeah, that's library.
Empress Library. What a weird name. Her son believes that the conspiracy which deposed his mother is still active. Deposed? What the heck does that word mean? I've never heard that word before. Have you?
Deposed.
Yeah, DOPOSED.
Deposed. Honestly, I can't say that I know what that means.
Anyway, and at the key to the anyway, it goes on, right? It doesn't.
It's very high concept sci-fi stuff, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and it doesn't grab me. And I think cool they're bringing back these characters or this character, but what's the point?
It's interesting. It's not the Torchwood that we know from the show. It's kind of far future Torchwood. Oh, yeah. That guy.
Yeah,
I just got the image of the guy. Yeah. It's an idea. It's not something that I, as a Doctor Who viewer, is something I gravitate towards to. Kind of, while I like Doctor Who, I don't like most sci-fi, and this kind of sounds like just kind of like a sci-fi story from the world of Doctor Who, but it's not really a Doctor Who-esque story. So maybe I'm sure there is an audience who's interested in this type of high-concept sci-fi stuff, especially amongst Big Finish listeners. It's not the kind of thing I would listen to.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if there's follow-ups, but maybe there's a bigger audience for this kind of content that I'm aware of.
I think most people would have rather have had a Big Finish spin-off of that actual base from that episode. You know, before the Doctor and Rose arrived, what were they up to? What adventures did they have beforehand? That seems more exciting rather than just going, here's one of them and they're doing something completely different.
And now for something completely different.
Yeah, it sounds a bit just like fan service for the sake of it. It's like, what haven't we done yet? Well,
you say it's not fan service, but I don't feel like there were fans, really desperate to get the further adventures of the one guy from the Satan Pit. So I can only assume that there's someone on the Big Finish creative team who just had this idea and really liked that story and was really enthusiastic about it. Or either that, or that this cast member was kind of eager to come back and do something in the world of Doctor Who. Either way, I can only assume it's some kind of passion project rather than pure fan service. In which case, that's really cool for whoever is, helming this project.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of surprised that it exists. I'm not completely opposed to it. It's just surprising.
Yeah, it's something that's unlikely, but it's unlikely because I don't know who's asking for it. But things that people are asking for is who is going to be the next Doctor, Harry. And I don't know if you remember, I think
Oh,
2 weeks ago we spoke about the fact that Noel Clarke, aka Mickey Smith, had been rumored, and his name was sort of in the hat of people to replace Jodie Whittaker. Do you remember that?
yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, now talking to Good Morning Britain, he admits that those comments have been taken a little bit out of context. He says, "I don't think that is true at all. Occasionally, I bump into some of the doctors who are friends of mine, and I'll post a picture with them, and I think people get a bit excited. I was asked in an interview, would I ever consider it? Like any normal human, I said I would consider it, and then think." Yeah, and then basically that he just said he would consider it, but he said, I'll put it out there. I will also consider James Bond and any Marvel character they want to give me if that's what people keep doing every time I say something.
So I feel like this is pretty much Noel's way of saying, any actor, when offered a huge role, would obviously be eager to take it. But I feel like this kind of pretty much confirms that he hasn't been in any talks, and that it was kind of an entirely speculative response.
Yeah. What do you think to that though of former companions taking up the lead role as the Doctor?
It's an interesting one because for the most part, supporting characters on Doctor Who, playing a supporting character doesn't really exclude you from playing a Doctor. Obviously, both Colin Baker and Peter Capaldi had supporting roles in Doctor Who before taking the mantle of the Doctor themselves.
Yeah.
Where that starts to bring up questions is the area of companions and then more significant characters such as, say, the Brigadier or the Master. And I feel like if you've played a character such as that, that's pretty much you making your mark and your stamp on Doctor Who and Doctor Who's legacy quite definitively. And it does start to get to a questionable area of whether or not, after playing that, you've played a role too iconic within the world of Doctor Who to then play the Doctor themselves.
What about Noel Clarke then, in that respect? Because I know we're big fans of Mickey and Jackie and the whole Tyler group. On a personal side, I feel like if Noel were to play the Doctor, it would take away from the role that he once had as Mickey and the importance of that.
That is true. I feel like it would be impossible to go, if Noel were to play the Doctor, it would be impossible to go back to the role of Mickey without thinking about it within the framework of the actor who went on to play the 14th Doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like Mickey, especially, that era of Doctor Who is still so popular, and Mickey is still, I can only assume he's a very popular character. The show would have to address that. The show couldn't just cast a companion from a popular era of the show in the role of the Doctor without addressing the fact that they look just like a former companion.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I was trying to think of an example then, but like even when Capaldi was cast as a Doctor, they referenced the fact that he had been in Doctor Who before within the show. And then I'm thinking of other companions. I know it's maybe not the best topical example, but the actor who played Adam, and I know that actor is, not very well looked upon for various reasons right now. But just as an example, the character of Adam, even though he was only in 2 or 3 episodes, even if you were to bring an actor who had been in 2 or 3 episodes before back as the Doctor, I feel like fans would go, I can't, because Doctor Who fans are so intense with the actors and the people involved in it. It's like who's the actor who played Sally Sparrow in Blink? Is it Carey Mulligan? I want to say.
Was it Carey Mulligan? I don't think it was Carey Mulligan.
Pretty sure. Well, no. Let me just have a quick look.
Carey Mulligan has obviously been in the spotlight lately because she was nominated. Was she nominated for Best Actress for Not Promising Young Woman?
Carey Mulligan, played Sally Sparrow in Blue. Yeah.
Was it actually Carey Mulligan?
Yeah, you would
No
have.
way!
Yeah.
I didn't know that was Carey Mulligan.
But like,
Get out of here!
But even like Sally Sparrow, like she had that one episode, and even though it's an iconic episode, you couldn't then cast Carey Mulligan as the Doctor. That said, now I've said
Oscar-nominated Carey Mulligan was in Blink. What the hell? I didn't realize that. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I personally enjoy it when we get actors who haven't been in Doctor Who before.
Yeah, and I feel like you said, I don't think there's any other franchise in which the casting of actors is scrutinized quite so much as it is in Doctor Who. And, the reason for that is that obviously kind of an integral part of the show's identity is that the main character is recast every few years.
Yeah.
And it is, it's not something I really thought about. It is true. And like you said, kind of Capaldi, they kind of acknowledged the fact that the actor playing him had been a character before. And that's one of the things I actually really liked about Capaldi's era. That they acknowledged that, and that they actually used that and said, the fact I look like someone who I've saved before is this message, and it's a reminder that I should help people.
Yeah.
So I feel like if they were to recast the Doctor as Noel Clarke, they'd kind of have to do a similar thing and be like, I look like Mickey to remind myself, like, maybe I should not dismiss people as being lesser than myself or as idiots. Well, I was thinking more kind of the whole, Mickey the idiot thing that Exxon went through. Maybe a thing of like, I look like this is a reminder that I should value humans on an equal level to myself or something, which could actually be a very cool kind of arc for the Doctor.
Yeah. Talking of people who could play the Doctor, a fan favourite that we've thrown around recently is Ollie Alexandra. Now, Harry... Alexandra... It's ER, isn't it? Ollie Alexandra.
Yeah, you said Alexandra. You've always said Alexandra, but it's actually Alexander.
Alexander.
It's Ollie Alexander, anyway. Yeah.
Ollie. It doesn't look like he is going to be taking up the role of the Doctor anytime soon. Appearing on Tuesday, the 20th of April's The One Show, he was asked by host Alex Jones about the rumours that are circling that he might be joining Doctor Who. He responded with, "Do you think if I was, I would tell you?" To which he then said, where Ollie said that he would love to join Doctor Who, the Doctor Who cast, but admitted that it's not on the cards anytime soon. "I would love to. What an amazing role that would be. But it's not happening, I don't think, anytime soon."
Oh, honestly, that's kind of a shame because of all the kind of prominent rumours, Ollie Alexander is the one I think I was probably the most behind.
Yeah. And I think
especially after watching It's a Sin, he's great. And I do think he would have been great as the Doctor. So that is a bit of a loss, honestly.
People will say that, he's just saying it. But what I think we've often found is that when people say it's not on the cards and don't get your hopes up, usually does mean a solid no. Because normally they give some, you'll have to wait and see, or I'm not allowed to say, or I don't know. I don't.
I would love the opportunity if it. Yeah.
But the fact is that I would love to, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's pretty much a deconfirmation.
Which then does then make me think, is Jodie actually leaving anyway? If he was such a prominent candidate to take over, is Jodie just going to hang around a little bit longer?
The longer this goes on, the more I'm starting to think that Jodie will just stay on for a fourth series.
Yeah. So talking of returning to... Well, I'm not talking about returning to Doctor Who at all, but we've had a very sort of Doctor Who casting heavy episode, so let's jump straight back onto that. I don't know what I'm on about here. Doctor Who Time Fracture, they've just done a very, very exciting tweet. Now, Harry, you're not 100% sure what Doctor Who Time Fracture is, are you?
I'm not. Is that like one of those escape room experiences, or am I completely wrong?
Okay, so I'll read you the synopsis of Doctor Who Time Fracture from their website. Doctor Who Time Fracture is a groundbreaking, immersive theatrical experience plunges you into the incredible universe of Doctor Who. 1940, at the height of the Blitz, a weapon of unknown origin destroys a small corner of Mayfair and simultaneously opens a rift in space and time. For decades, Unit have fought undetected to protect the people of Earth from the dangers it poses. Weakened and beaten back to the fractures multiplied. Basically the fractures. They've fought it back. It's now gone a bit AWOL, I suppose. From the producers of Immersive Everywhere. Have you ever heard of them, Harry? You're a theatre guy.
I don't think I have, no.
The creative minds behind London's longest running and acclaimed immersive theatre production, The Great Gatsby, an official license by BBC Studios, Doctor Who Time Fracture will welcome its first unit recruits to HQ in spring 2021. So this is an immersive theatre experience. Now, as a theatre nerd,
Okay.
Harry, what is immersive theatre?
Immersive theatre is my understanding of it only goes as far as kind of prominent examples such as Punch Drunk. So forgive me if this lacks detail, but it's kind of, instead of you, the audience, being kind of sat on a seat and watching the theatre unfold in front of them, it usually takes kind of a unconventional location for theatre, and the audience kind of walks through these different kind of vignettes and scenes, and sometimes directly engages and interacts with them and with the cast members. Okay. And through walking through this, they experience kind of a full theatrical story.
All right, cool. So the reason we're bringing this up, because most Doctor Who fans will know about this, but the reason we're bringing it back up is that the Doctor Who Time Fracture Twitter account tweeted two very exciting photos confirming the return of two New Who classic characters that will be involved in Doctor Who Time Fracture. Now, I know a lot of fans will be excited about this, so I will just say that the chances of you turning up to Doctor Who Time Fracture and these characters played by these actors being there is very unlikely. I believe that it's just going to be green screen footage that will be shown as part of the experience. And these two characters are David Bradley's first Doctor, first seen in Adventure Space and Time in 2013, and then again in 2017's Twice Upon a Time, and the return again of John Barrowman as Captain Jack Harkness. What do you want to say about this, Harry?
I think it's very, very cool. David Bradley, I'm a big fan of David Bradley and all of his work, which there's a lot of. Seeing him getting to work more with the first Doctor, I think is very cool. And it's kind of cool to see that role and him in that role starting to become a bit more of a mainstay within Doctor Who media. And again, it is very promising to see John Barrowman back again as Captain Jack. And it kind of hopefully kind of feeds into that hope that you have that Captain Jack kind of becomes a Brigadier style recurring character within the show.
Yeah.
If he's starting to have kind of appearances outside of that in the role. I think it's still very good.
Yeah, two things. This week there have been further rumours that John Barrowman will return to Doctor Who series, whatever the next series is, because some concepts out of an upcoming Doctor Who comic leaked online that involved Captain Jack. And that comic was a direct tie-in with one of the episodes of the next series. And the second thing is, could this be a really cool meeting of Captain Jack and the First Doctor?
That would be interesting.
That would be cool.
You've not seen footage of them on the green screen together,
no.
So I'm inclined to believe that it would be that their segments are maybe being filmed separately and they're two separate parts of the experience, and that kind of, I imagine you'd see them on a screen and be just them, similar to how you see it in The Line for a theme park ride. They often get actors to do stuff for that. Top example off my head is Christopher Lloyd recorded a bunch of stuff for the line for the Back to the Future ride at Universal back in the day.
And also,
so I imagine it could be something along those lines.
In the Simpsons ride as well.
Oh yes, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
You went to Universal, right?
Yeah, I went when I was about 7 or 8.
Was the Back to the Future ride already replaced then?
It was the Simpsons ride, and I was very, very, very excited for the Simpsons ride, and the Christopher Lloyd cameo in the queue was exciting, but I wasn't as much.
Did you know about the Back to the Future ride at the time?
I knew it had been replaced by the Simpsons ride, but at the same time, I wasn't totally as a Back to the Future nerd as I am now. That said, there's a fun story where I saw the Screen Use DeLorean, and I just left my parents at the age of 7. I just walked across it. But anyway, my understanding is that Doctor Who Time Fracture will have different sort of storylines that you can follow, almost like an escape room sort of thing. Almost like, I don't know if anybody has ever done the Crystal Maze in Manchester. That's amazing. Definitely go out and turn up there. But you never guarantee the same thing twice. You know, like Star Tours and stuff like that at Disney World and these sort of immersive theme park rides. So I think that you might not even be guaranteed a John Barrowman cameo on your first appearance there, your first time there. You might get a David Bradley. And in this video that they I keep saying tomorrow, the day you are listening to this podcast, if you're listening to this on Tuesday, the 27th of April, the video is probably out, or some photos, or they've released something. And we've probably got a video coming up on that shortly as well. But it's exciting, right?
It's cool. It's very cool. It's always cool to kind of see these prominent actors doing stuff outside of the main show, and it kind of makes it feel in a way like these characters are less so kind of a special cameo and more kind of a common reoccurrence and part of the furniture almost, which for a character like Captain Jack, I kind of like that. I kind of prefer his character being something that is kind of just like a common mainstay and kind of something that kind of keeps the show just like a thread throughout, which is weird because obviously one of the great things about Doctor Who is its ability to change. But at the same time, it's cool to have recurring characters such as the Brigadier or John Barrowman that kind of keep things grounded and kind of bring you back home and kind of help put things into perspective.
Yeah.
So I quite like that kind of cushy reoccurrence.
Yeah, definitely. So depending on when this podcast comes out and depending on when that video from Doctor Who Time Fracture comes out as well, depends on if we'll talk about it. You might have to wait till next week, but I'm sure that we can find some time to talk about if there's anything massively exciting in there that we can talk about. But Harry, do you want to do that thing that where we? Is it the Shakespeare Code this week? Is that this week or was that last week?
It is.
You sure?
I think it did. No, last week was Smith and Jones.
Okay.
Because we had a whole kerfuffle. Tim. I used the same bit I was going to use last week before we realized we were making a mistake. You know how in my MA I'm like I have to learn how to like do scripts and stuff and act.
Yeah.
Well, I've been working with Shakespeare, and I have to say, like Shakespeare's language, it's really like difficult. Like it's nothing like the way that we talk nowadays. The way it's written, it's not written like normal human speech. It's like got all these speech patterns and iambic pentameter, and it's almost written like. Is its own code, like a sort of
like Shakespeare's code,
like a Shakespeare code, yeah. Speaking of the Shakespeare code,
I think that was one of the better ones. That's one of the better ones. Enjoy us talking about the Shakespeare code, guys. Stick around to the end for some news or whatever on how to follow us and keep up to date. If you are listening on Google Podcasts, hello and welcome, and apologies for this one. And go back.
I thought it was a good one. I like this one.
I like this one. See you later, guys.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut it down, pop up!
Humans are better in one respect. You are better at subscribing. Seek, locate, subscribe.
What's the point in having you all?
Shakespeare didn't die. No, Shakespeare didn't die. Shakespeare
didn't die. No, Shakespeare didn't die. Woo! Woo!
Yeah, Shakespeare's alive, baby. Thanks to Doctor Who Series 3, Episode 2, which is called what, Harry?
The Shakespeare Code by Gareth Roberts.
Yeah. What's he done previously? The name rings a bell.
Gareth Roberts. I don't really know any of his writing work beyond Doctor Who. He does quite a handful of Doctor Who episodes down the line, I believe, but this is his first.
I'm just having because I think Gareth Roberts might be a semi-controversial writer, but I just want to say we're not, we're just curious to see what he's wrote before he's done this, because the name does ring a bell, but for the life of me, I cannot put my finger on what that was. No, the Shakespeare Code was his first, and then there's several after that.
Yeah, like you said, Gareth Roberts, I believe, has done and said some highly controversial things in the past. But I think for the sake of this podcast, it's probably best that we focus on this episode kind of in isolation.
Yeah, we're not ignorant to the fact that he's said stuff in the past, but the writing for this episode especially isn't something we're particularly going to focus on. What I do want to focus on is the set that they have made for 1599. I want to say it's a studio set that they've made up, but I know when we spoke about the Unicorn and the Wasp, you mentioned about the BBC's costume department. Not the Unicorn and the Wasp. Sorry.
Yes, not the Unicorn and the Wasp.
What's it called? The Unquiet Dead.
The Unquiet Dead, yes. That I was just saying, kind of the advantage that Doctor Who has being a BBC production is that obviously one of the things the BBC is best known for is these really high budget historical period pieces, these historical dramas. And obviously when it comes to a Doctor Who historical, they have that whole archive of different set dressings and costumes and potentially even bits of sets that they can kind of lift and then use in Doctor Who to make these really authentic, really high quality looking historicals. I think that, amongst many things, is probably one of the reasons why, as a kid, I always remember the historicals always being my favorite to watch.
Yeah.
Because you just could really immerse yourself in that period.
Yeah, I do like the historical ones. I think I prefer the Earth stories and the historical stories more than I prefer we're on a spaceship or we're on a planet, which is strange because it's a sci-fi program, but I prefer it when there are sci-fi elements within an almost normal story. So it is Shakespeare, but there are witches. It is Charles Dickens, but it is ghosts, and it is sci-fi ghosts. It's not just a ghost. Do you know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And I agree that I feel like the thing that makes Doctor Who special is, despite the fact it can go anywhere and any time, there's always been a focus on kind of education and history. Like when the show was made, it was made with the intention of it being this kind of edutainment program that would be entertaining for kids, but would also educate them. That's why the first companions were a science teacher and a history teacher. And for me, this episode was actually very reminiscent of that. Like when the Doctor and Martha first step out of the TARDIS into that great looking Elizabethan street, Martha's asking all these questions about the time period, and David, as the Doctor, is being almost kind of a teacher in that scene, kind of educating you and showing you about this period. And for me, that was something which I found really cool.
Yeah, you mentioned it there that Martha steps out and she asks questions about the time period. And one thing that is mentioned for one of the first times in New Who, especially, is that Martha is the first companion of colour in Doctor Who, the first proper century. We had Mickey last series is kind of a side character, but to be actual the Doctor Who girl, as it were. And it does touch on that throughout the episode, with Shakespeare referring to Martha as various phrases and codes. But it is also sort of done in sort of a jovial way, which I wasn't too sure about, because he says this stuff about Martha, and then she questions it, and he says, well, aren't we allowed to say that anymore? Which is never been more relevant than ever before. I think now, the amount of stuff that the amount of times where I'm ever on Twitter, you know, the boomers complaining that they can't say offensive words anymore. But from my knowledge, they don't really touch on that much throughout the series, do they?
No, I believe it's something that is kind of brought up significantly in Human Nature and Family of Blood.
Yes, yeah, it is, yeah. But there's no... I would have liked maybe... I think Freema's... I could be so wrong here, but I know Freema has recently spoken about returning to the show, and she would only return if there was some real serious character development for Martha, which, without spoiling anything, compared to Rose, Martha doesn't change that much from what I can remember. She goes on some really big adventures towards the end of the series, but when she leaves we'll get to it.
Because I'm inclined to disagree with that. I feel like Martha, while at points during this series perhaps gets in a bit of a rut, actually post-series 3, I think she really develops and becomes much more fleshed out and independent as a character, which I think is really cool. Kind of arguably more so in Rose, because we get to see it.
Yeah. Dean Lennox Kelly, who people will probably know best from Shameless, and won't know at all from appearing on this podcast because he never came on. We were so close to getting him on this podcast, but we couldn't arrange a date. He plays Shakespeare, and he's great at it. As a drama nut yourself, Harry, how is Dean Lennox Kelly's Shakespeare?
Well, I'll be the first to admit that I've honestly not seen that many on-screen depictions of Shakespeare. I know there's stuff like David Mitchell and Upstart Crow, which I should probably get around to checking out.
Have you not seen that?
Because I know you're a big fan. I'm not seen it. I know you're a big fan, aren't you?
I really like it. I really, really like it, yeah. It's Ben Elton, I want to say, who co-writer of Blackadder and Mr. Bean and all that. And then with David Mitchell's wittiness, it is great. Apologies if you can hear my change in my pocket. I'm just taking it out. Sorry, Harry, go on.
Yeah, but I've not seen stuff like that or Shakespeare in Love. So I'm personally very open to different interpretations of Shakespeare and how he could be portrayed, because historically, we obviously know his work and a few biographical facts, but we don't know a ton about who he was as a person. And I really like that this depiction, instead of leaning into kind of the mythos and him being this living legend, really kind of ground him. They really, they have him throwing, having a back and forth with the audience. We show him flirting with Martha. We show him drinking.
Yeah.
And it really humanizes him, but in a way that doesn't just kind of degrade this figure and mock him, because at the same time, it's also shown that he is incredibly, incredibly smart, which he was. Shakespeare's a genius, one of the greatest, if not the greatest living writer in the English language at the very least. And it doesn't shy away from that. It doesn't just throw that away for a cheap gag. It's a really well-rounded depiction of Shakespeare, which I was very pleasantly surprised to see returning for this episode.
Yeah. Talking of Shakespeare, do we have Shakespeare to thank for the MCU? Because it is my understanding that he creates sequels.
That's something, that's a new thing I've never heard before. I mean, I don't know if sequels was a concept invented by Shakespeare. Very well could be. I mean, to my knowledge, the main kind of overarching narrative which was in Shakespeare's plays was the histories, of all the different kings.
Yeah.
Which obviously, there's overlap in those, because when one dies, another takes its place, and so on and so forth.
Like Doctor Who, when one dies, another one takes its place. It's all coming together.
It's all coming together.
The prosthetics on those witch characters, the Carrionites. There is 3 Carrionites. There's 2 god-awful ugly ones and 1 lovely-looking, young, attractive one that flirts with David Tennant constantly throughout the episode. The prosthetics on the ones that are meant to look like witches, what is your thoughts on that? Because I think it looks good, but there is something about it that just makes it look like a mask.
I think what's partly the cause of that is that, obviously, before we see them in their full forms, we see them in those kind of disguises where those witches are disguised as these, attractive women, obviously without the prosthetics. And so then when they're in prosthetics, we have the mental image of, we know what they actually look like underneath that. And because of that, we're much more aware of the mask.
What did you think then to the Carrionite CGI?
That was interesting. The first time we saw it, when it was in the rehearsal and it appears, I thought it was quite cool. I thought the way it moved was quite almost puppet-like. But then I thought, why didn't they actually make, say, a puppet and then superimpose that over?
Yeah, because the CGI is not, the actual rendering of it doesn't look too good. But the concept behind it, I think, is good. It's just not very well executed. Like you said, if they had got a puppet, put it on green screen, added some glow and some flame effects in Premiere Pro or whatever, it would have looked amazing. And what I find crazy now is that somebody listening to this probably will be able to do that on their laptop at home. So do it.
We need to get the British equivalent of Corridor Digital, whoever they may be, to...
Hallway Analog.
Hallway Analog. Hello, we're Hallway Analog, and we're gonna react to some British special effects in it. Oh, this is Docky Who.
There is no British version of Ren. That name doesn't exist in British culture. I've never met anybody called Ren.
What's Reg?
Reg.
Oh, it's me, Reg.
Last week we spoke about the blue suit of the 10th Doctor. The first time we saw the blue suit. He's back in the brown suit this week. I didn't realise till he was back in the brown suit how good that brown suit is. I know last week I was instantly more favourable of the blue suit. I said it looks great, but the brown suit also looks great. And I think for the rest of the series, I'm going to be torn up on which one I think I like best.
It's one of those things. It's very similar to the actually watching the Doctors, where very often for me, my favourite suit or Doctor is the one I watched last.
Yeah.
Like when I was watching Eccleston, I was like, oh man, Eccleston's my favourite Doctor. And then we got to Tennant, and I'm like, oh, Tennant's so good though. And the same's going to happen when we get to Matt Smith, I know it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the suits. It's like, oh, the blue suit looks so sleek, it has the contrast, but then, oh, the brown suit's got the pinstripe, the creases. I mean, I guess, it's better than having one that you think is definitively superior over the other.
Yeah. Two things. Actually, no, I've got two things to say. We'll go with Martha. What do you think of Martha's costume? Because this is the first time we really see Martha in what becomes an iconic costume, her action figure costume, so to speak, which is jeans and a red leather jacket.
You know that I'm not impartial to a red leather jacket, Tim.
That's true. Doing your Martha cosplay in your spare time.
For context, I own a red leather jacket. It's probably one of my favorite items that I own. Like, I'm not a very materialistic person, but when it comes to like the material goods I own, that's up there. Like, I like that more than like something like my phone or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I love that jacket. And I love leather jackets, man. Leather jackets are great. Eccleston's one, Martha's one. I think it's cool. I think.
Name one more leather jacket in Doctor Who. Name one more leather jacket in Doctor Who.
Oh heck. There will be one.
You can't move on till you've said it.
Wait, is there a third one? Isn't that I'm forgetting? A really obvious third leather jacket
I can't
in
think of
Doctor
one.
Who?
Does Jack ever wear one? Don't think he does. Oh no.
No, Jack wears an army coat. World War
He
II.
wears leather trousers at one point.
He does. I don't have an opinion on leather trousers. I've never tried them out myself.
Liar. My next point is, I put this on Twitter the other day, and I said I love Jodie's costume. I think it's really great for her character, but I do feel that if whatever they do with the 14th Doctor, they should strip it down and go back to basics like they did with Chris, because I run the risk of that it gets too quirky and too characteristic, and we end up like we did with Colin with the 6th Doctor. What are your thoughts on this?
I found it very interesting because, to me, Jodie's costume is exactly that, a simplification. If you compare it to the costumes that came before hers, such as Matt Smith's second costume with a coat, with the waistcoat, a jig and everything, and then Capaldi's kind of, I don't want to say magician-y, but you know what I mean? With like the big, again, overcoat, waistcoat and all that. And then Capaldi had like so many costume changes. Jodie, for me, really was a bringing it back down to basics, and I remember them kind of really putting an emphasis on kind of how practical that costume was, like the coat and the trousers have pockets for ease to put things in.
Yeah.
It's kind of got the boots for kind of all terrain. I really like Jodie's costume, and I don't feel like that is over-designed or overly quirky. I feel like it's very clean and stylish and fresh, without lacking any kind of personality. And I kind of hope that that's forward.
Are you just saying that because your avatar for this channel is Jodie Whittaker's costume?
No, I really like the Jodie costume. I think it's a great costume. I actually prefer the simpler costumes. Like, the Jodie costume's great. I think Matt Smith's first costume, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think the tweed jacket is better than the overcoat.
No way.
We'll do a costume ranking down the line. At some point, Okay, at some point, we're going to do a Doctor Who costume ranking.
Yeah, we have to because
Okay.
we're clearly disagreeing.
All the tent suits, even including the Series 6 overcoat, which was really weird.
Yeah. I love seeing the Doctor give Shakespeare his own quotes back to him that he hasn't written yet.
Did Eccleston do that with Charles Dickens, or is that something new for this episode?
I imagine he did. He must have said something. Because I don't know how, as a writer, you wouldn't be tempted to write that in. I know there's a bit that I love in The Unquiet Dead, and I probably mentioned it the other day, where Dickens says, instead of saying what the Dickens, he says what the Shakespeare. And they should have had Shakespeare. Oh no, they couldn't have had Shakespeare in this say what the Dickens, because Dickens wasn't around. But if they could have worked something like that in where Shakespeare said what the, and harken back to an even earlier writer before Shakespeare, that would have been great.
I'm trying to think who that would be. Like, this is where my lack of knowledge of old English writers really starts to show. I should get my brother on. He knows this kind of thing. Maybe do like what the Homer, like, is in the Greek Homer.
Yeah. What do you think then to that? There's sort of one really important scene in this that I feel not a lot of people talk about, and it's the bedroom scene between the Doctor and Martha, where they are told they have to share the same bedroom and the same bed, and it becomes very clear that, I don't know if it is clear that that Martha has feelings for the Doctor in this episode. It doesn't show too much, but in that scene, I hate to say it, but in that scene, I got more vibes from Martha that she was after a quick one-night thing rather than she fancied him, if you see what I mean. It was more like, oh, look at us, we're in the same bed.
It's definitely true that later down the line, it kind of becomes very clear that Martha's feelings are of a more romantic sense, of more, she says that she loves the Doctor. But yeah, I am inclined to agree that, I feel like Martha currently, she's being very, flirtatious, and I think this is kind of, she's been told this is one trip, so she's thinking, oh yeah, a bit of a fun fling in Shakespearean times.
Apologies, my alarm went off on my phone. But the Doctor in that scene, the way he's just oblivious to it all, I sort of found that hard to sort of believe a little bit, because I thought, well, surely he must be able to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that the 10th Doctor has been shown to be very much a romantic, and he doesn't shy away from being a romantic, snogging Madame Pompadour, flirting with Rose. I think he flirted with Rose a lot. I feel like this is going to be putting down the 10th Doctor as a character, but I feel like he kind of is aware of how Martha feels in that scene and that situation, and he's almost just taking advantage of that and that company, to kind of have someone to listen to him, lament about Rose. That's something that some people theories, the fact that he takes so long to get over Rose. And this is kind of like the first prime example that people point to for that. How do you feel about that?
Doesn't really bother me so much now. I can't really remember too much about Series 4, but if he's still banging on about her in Series 4, I would be like, oh, get over it. Obviously, knowing what comes in Series 4, it would be okay to sort of foreshadow that. But I feel like to mention her a lot in this series and then foreshadow her in the next, it can be too intense. Maybe a series in between where there is nothing, or just nothing in this series, would have worked perhaps better.
If he'd been perhaps more private about Rose. Perhaps not been so quick to reveal.
Definitely. Why didn't they just sleep in the TARDIS? What was that, sorry?
Does the TARDIS have a bed in it?
Well, it must,
because I know that, like,
it does when Matt Smith has it, because he gives. Because Jack in the most recent appearance of Captain Jack, he mentions that he used to have a bedroom and a bar, and Rory and Amy say that they have bunk beds.
This is the one thing about the TARDIS design that always confuses me. Like, how do you get to these other rooms? Like, Maximus' second TARDIS and Capaldi's TARDIS, where you can see, corridors leading to different rooms. There's no doors other than the entrance and exit. How do you get these other rooms? Is there like just a staircase or a door just off screen?
It must be. I wish I would. Can you imagine if, like, in a comic, they just revealed what the other side of the TARDIS looked like? How great would that be?
It's all these doors and staircases.
That would be great.
There's a stairway to get to that dressing room from the Christmas Invasion.
Yeah. I don't know if you would have picked up on this, but the guy who is in the mental hospital is Matt King, who is Super Hands in Peep Show, a sitcom I know I've mentioned several times. David Mitchell, also from Peep Show, also plays Shakespeare in Upstart Crow. I just thought I should mention it. I know there's no conversation to be had about that. I just like Peep Show and I like Matt King, so I thought I would mention that as a fact.
It's all connected, isn't it?
It's all
connected. British TV, it's all bloody connected. It's all the same show.
Another thing that I'm sure you noticed when you were watching it, that I know it's coming. My face lights up every time the 10th Doctor mentions and recalls the events to Martha of my favourite movie, Back to the Future. When he just turns around and goes, Back to the Future, and he starts talking about Marty McFly. Man, that's like they're my two favourite things in this world, Doctor Who and Back to the Future. And when they combine, I love it. How do you feel about the fact that the Doctor is a fan of Back to the Future? And also, how do you feel about that sort of lazy storytelling where they go, that other thing that did it, that's what we're doing here, like they did in Endgame?
Well, in Endgame, they kind of just say, no, it's not like Back to the Future. It's like this, our own thing. This, I feel like it works here. I can't exactly remember the context which she brings up Back to the Future, but I remember when watching, it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And the fact that the Doctor likes Back to the Future, that makes sense. Like, I believe, at least the 10th Doctor, I couldn't say if, like, say, Capaldi likes Back to the Future. No. If his Doctor likes it. But I can see the 10th Doctor being a fan. I know, he's obviously a fan of pop culture because he also several times refers to Harry Potter in this.
He does, doesn't he? Yeah. It does. Where else does he refer to Harry Potter? He refers to it in this one. What's the other one?
It's both. He refers to it twice in this episode.
Oh, he does, doesn't he? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Because he says, like...
Sorry, go on.
First he mentions how at the end of the 7th book he cried, which obviously was a reference to the fact the 7th book hadn't come out yet. And also was probably aged considered very, very well, considering that lots of people cried at the last Harry Potter book. That's my fire alarm. Don't worry, it's not. It's just a drill.
Are you sure?
I'm sure it's just a drill. This is a regular...
It's 9 o'clock at night.
It's just a drill.
At 9 o'clock at night?
It's going to go off at any second. And if it doesn't, then that means there's an actual fire and I'll have to leave.
Imagine! Harry, your place could be on fire. You should probably disappear for a little bit.
I am going to take off.
Leave this on.
Yeah, leave this on. If the alarm turns off, I'll head back.
Okay.
Hi, Tim. Yeah, everything's fine. Turns out that nothing was burning.
Oh well. We talk about Back to the Future. I want to talk about the physical comedy in this episode because David gets some really good. He gets a really good scene in which one of his hearts stops working. One of his hearts stops working. Yeah. So Martha has to sort of beat him up a little bit, smack him around to get it working. And something like you said last week is that you think David was maybe more keen on more physical comedy aspects in this series because we get the barefoot on the moon aspect in last week. We get this week. What are your thoughts on this?
I think the thing that always stands out to me is when he says, "This is what having one heart is like. How do people cope?" Which just makes me really wonder what the experience of being a Time Lord is and why they need two hearts to be constantly pumping blood through their bodies. Like, I'm no biologist. Does blood go to the brain? It does go to the brain, right?
I don't want to say yes or no.
Maybe Time Lord
like an idiot either way.
Neither do I. Like, I'm just saying, like, maybe like a Time Lord's so smart that they need more blood pumping through their system to keep up with them and how fast they are at thinking and reacting. Because I feel like Time Lords are meant to be biologically a like more advanced race
Yeah.
than humans.
Even though he is half human.
Is he? Is that canon?
I recently watched a
thought it
TV
was just like a
movie.
throwaway
We'll do a
line.
video on that shortly, but we'll save that. There's a tease. Come
Yeah.
back for the TV movie when we do that. I'm all out of notes. Out of notes. No notes. Anything you've got to say about the Shakespeare Code that we haven't touched on already, Harry?
Let's see. I mean, obviously, the ending with Queen Elizabeth the First.
Oh, yeah. That's great, isn't it? At the time, that meant nothing, really. But now knowing that gets resolved and when and where it gets resolved is very fun.
It is very fun. And it's interesting that was, of all things, that from this episode was picked up down the line.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was. I guess that's the great thing about Doctor Who and it being so timey-wimey, which is that things that happen to the show way in the future can change the way you watch the show in the past.
Yeah. I hope in the 60th,
Yeah.
when David returns for the 60th, I'd love it if they could revisit that. So he's doing something else, and Queen Elizabeth turns up and is still pissed off with him, or maybe just a different
love the
royal.
fact
He's
that
just going through the royal family.
I love the fact that you say when David is in the 60th, because there's no doubt in your mind that David Tennant is going to be in the 60th.
There's no doubt in my mind that they will ask him.
I've no doubt in my mind either. I feel like David will be in his 60th. And I feel like because that would be like his last real chance to convincingly reprise the role of the Doctor, unless he ages like insanely well.
Or he does the human Doctor on Parallel Earth.
Oh yeah, 10-2.
Yeah.
But I feel like people I don't feel like people really want to see 10-2 though. I know that's a controversial thing to say, but I feel like people don't really have a connection to that human version of the Doctor. The Doctor that we followed is the Doctor.
He's the Wish Doctor. You can't get the real Doctor, so you get one off Wish, and that is 10-2 Doctor.
The Wish.com discount Doctor.
Yeah.
But he's off living with Rose in a house somewhere. I mean, this is going very far ahead, but maybe we'll spend the weird speculation about what 10-2 has done with his life to when we get to that episode.
Anything else, Harry? Anything else?
Expelliarmus.
Very good. It's time for the quiz!
You, not me. I hate being patient. Patience is for wimps.
Oh, it's a quiz! Oh, Jesus.
3 questions. 1 million points each this week. So big points.
Big points.
When the Doctor says that Martha can tell everybody when she goes back home that she has seen Shakespeare, Martha says if she were to do that, she would be what?
Jeez. Oh, I remember this line. As I clear it down. Did she say she'd be institutionalized?
Oh, that is so close, but I'm afraid I cannot give you that. The correct
What did
answer
she-
is sectioned.
Ah!
I do
God.
apologise.
I knew it was
Next
something about,
question.
being called crazy.
Yeah. Next question is when Shakespeare appears on stage, what are his first words exactly?
Is it... Shut up?
Shut your big fat mouths.
Oh!
How many points did I say they were worth each?
1 million?
1 million. So you could be about to get 1 million points. How many lines are in a sonnet?
14.
Yay! 1 million points. But unfortunately, this is Whose Line Is It Anyway influence, so the points don't matter. Do you like Whose
Oh.
Line Is It Anyway?
I've never watched it.
Oh, you should, man. I was watching it today with my dad, laughing our heads off. Brilliant, one of the best shows ever. Anything to recommend, Harold?
Before I go, I just want to tell you you were fantastic.
Let me see. Do I have anything to recommend?
Fire safety.
Yeah, I recommend fire safety. Even in student accommodation, if you hear that fire alarm go off, head out the room.
I have a certificate in fire safety. A place where I used to work, I had to do a fire safety course, and I passed. And I was one of like the building's fire. Like if there was ever a fire, it was my responsibility to make sure everybody in the department I worked at got out the building safely. I was quite annoyed there was never a fire. I never got to really enhance my skills. So let's hope there's never a fire now. I don't know if that title carries on. Do I still hold that title? If there's a fire there now, do I have to go back and save everybody?
I mean, I feel like if you were there, you would be qualified to save everybody.
Oh, so if I went back and visited,
there's no
they'd be
obligation.
Like, why didn't you save us?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like that responsibility.
Oh, Tim, we've been waiting for you. We've needed someone to save us for a while now. We've not got anyone else with a certificate, but now you're here. You can help us out.
I'm going to recommend something I haven't watched yet, but I'm going to watch after this. I'm going to watch Zack Snyder's Justice League. At long last, here it is. The greatest movie ever to be made. It's going to change cinema, restore the Snyderverse. Hooray for Zack Snyder's Justice League.
What if you come back next week and you're like, oh man, the Snyder's Justice League wasn't actually that good?
Well, for those listening, it's the 18th of March. It'll be a little while before you hear this, so the reviews will already be out. I might do a video on it. I don't know. Check the channel. Maybe there's already a video on Snyder Cut. Probably not, because it's not Doctor Who related.
Why would we make a whole video about this? I don't remember. I remember that when the original Justice League came out, you quite liked it, despite all the, it not being
I think
Snyder's
I
vision.
did.
Am I correct in remembering that?
Well, I went with a friend and we enjoyed it because I think it's a movie you can enjoy, but it's not a good movie.
Okay, I think I know what you mean.
So, The Rise of Skywalker is a movie you can enjoy. It's not the best movie. And I think the fact that I haven't watched it, I've watched most of those DCE. I've watched Shazam since, I watched Aquaman, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman. I've watched them all since, but I've never bothered to go back and watch Justice League. I even own it, and I tried to watch it, and I fell asleep halfway through rewatching it, and I never bothered to go back. So that kind of tells you how interested I have been since. But I just want to say that the reason I'm excited to see Snyder's one isn't because I'm a diehard Snyder, release the Snyder Cut fanboy. But as a film student, I don't know about you, I find it so interesting and baffling that there was a 4-hour movie made that was reduced to 2 hours by a director who reshot around 85% of the original movie.
Because my understanding is like this isn't the Snyder Cut. The Snyder Cut theoretically was what the original Justice League movie was going to look like before they did the rewrites and the reshoots of Joss Whedon. This isn't just all that old footage being brought back, given the special effects, and cut together as Zack originally wanted. This is a different thing. This is an entirely new experience with, like you said, a bunch of new stuff filmed and made and put together. This is Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah.
Which in itself is a different entity to what the Snyder Cut would have been.
Yeah, because the Snyder Cut, I suppose it depends how you classify the phrase Snyder Cut. This is Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League, but Snyder's original version of Justice League doesn't exist because he wasn't able to film it because there was so we're going off track a little bit from.
No, it was he'd filmed a whole thing. It was just the reshoots he wasn't around for.
Yeah, well, the original thing is that they did Batman vs Superman, which was very dark, and then they originally had this idea for Justice League that was dark, and Warner Brothers said, no, you need to make it lighter because of the backlash from Batman vs Superman. So they did that. So that is the original Snyder Justice League. This is the Snyder cut of the Warner Brothers version of Justice League that they allowed him to make that he never did finish making.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting. It's basically kind of an experiment in what happens if we give one filmmaker complete creative and studio control over a huge superhero blockbuster. Something which, no matter how much someone may enjoy the Marvel cinematic universe, you have to admit, none of those films are completely one person's vision. There's always committee involvement, just for the very least, the sake of those films all being part of one cohesive universe.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm just excited to see what studio interference really does do. I should have really rewatched Justice League before this, but I haven't had a chance. But I'm going to go watch it.
I think I've not seen either version. Yeah, I've not seen either version, but I want to watch the 2017 Justice League before I watch Zack Snyder's Justice League, because I need that comparison.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, because Zack reshot a lot of stuff, I imagine that a lot of that stuff will be a direct response to what was in that 2017 cut. I feel like I want that full context.
I think you should watch it the other way around. I think you should watch Snyder's one first, and then watch what we all saw.
But I feel like then I'd have this impression of going to that one of, okay, I've seen what the film was meant to be, and now I'm seeing what the film was turned into. But actually, because so much of this footage in the Zack Snyder cut is new and was filmed after that version, I feel like chronologically it makes more sense for me to watch the 2017 original.
Yeah, I don't think there is that much new footage, as in that they shot new. I think it's only around 20%, 17%.
There's all the Jared Leto stuff, which was never going to be in the original. There's the aspect ratio, which if the film had originally released without the reshoots, it would never have been in this 4:3 ratio that it's going to be in now.
We'll have to wait and see, because I'll be watching it shortly, and I will probably finish watching it around 2:00 in the effing morning. It's going to be great, all 4 hours and 1 minute of it. Which I'm not looking forward to.
What's the 1 minute?
Probably just Zack Snyder. Probably just someone at Warner Brothers, the Warner Brothers intern who runs their Twitter, going, "Shut up! You're going to leave me alone now. Stop asking for this. You've got it. Stop tweeting us all the time."
It's crazy, isn't it? Just how much influence.
Released the Russell T Davies cut. Hashtag release that.
The Russell T Davies cut of what?
Life.
Russell T Davies got to end the show on his own terms in the way he wanted to.
That's true. Release the Colin Baker cut then. Release the Colin Baker cut.
The Baker cut of what?
Doctor Who. He was fired, man.
Oh, so you want to see the series, Sylvester's first series with
Colin Baker. Anyway, let's wrap this up, because I'm tired and I want to go and watch that movie now. Thank you for listening, guys. We've been doing the Shakespeare Code. My name is Tim Saxby. With me, as always, was Harry Murdoch. Round of applause for Harry Murdoch. Never doing that again. Follow us on Twitter, Bigger on the Inside, at Bigger on the Inside, Insta, Bigger on the Pod, YouTube.com/Bigger on the Inside, acastshows.acast.com/Bigger on the Inside. Leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, thank you for the Instagram messages. Last week we didn't have time to read them out. This week I forgot. So thank you very much. There were some. I know, Amber, you sent one in, so thank you very much. And I think someone else, whose name began with an L, sent one in, and you both enjoyed it, but feel the episode is underrated. So thanks for listening. I'll say goodbye. Bye-bye. Harold, you did not perish in flames this week. Congratulations. Would you like to say goodbye?
Fare thee well.
Oh, is that a Shakespeare thing?
Yeah, they sometimes say goodbye like that.
You should shout it like you do when you say bye-bye.
Fare thee well.
Did I stop? There we go. Oh. Wait, what's going on? How do I stop it?
Make sure you subscribe to the official Bigger on the Inside podcast.